This is Darosa, who's running for Boston City Council at large, and we're here to ask him two questions on Boston public schools. The first question is, what do you believe is the current state of the Boston public schools? A, what grade would you give it now? And B, what grade would you give them when Marty Walsh started 4 years ago?
I'll start off with B since we were speaking about 4 years ago. 4 years ago, I would say we were at like a C minus. And the reason why I say that, we didn't have as much budget cuts. Within the last 4 years, we've had every single school year receive drastic budget cuts. $20 million one year. The next year, we're looking at another 15, 20. So over the last 4 years, the school department has lost almost $100 million in funding, which that takes away from programs, students, abilities to receive the resources they need so they can become successful young adults. For today, I would give that a a F plus. We're in a worse situation now than we were 4 years ago, and it continues to dwindle down. And the reason why I give it that F plus, I graduated from Madison Park. I was a Madison Park alumni. I'm active with the school. I attend a lot of the football games, basketball games. I'm part of the alumni group. I do the events that the alumni put on. So saying that, reason why I give it the F plus is because Madison 2 years ago was missing close to 70 teachers. Students were free to roam the hallway. They had no schedules. They had no guidance because they didn't have a headmaster and no one from downtown. And when I mean downtown, I'm talking about school department, the main office. No one with all these degrees wouldn't step up and say, hey, you know what? Let me come out my office and attend to their school's needs so we can put it back in the right track. Madison right now is getting ready to be taken over by the state. It's the only Voc Tech high school in Boston. It's a gem. It's a school that in my eyes would benefit everyone, not just the students. It would benefit everyone across Massachusetts. Because these individuals who attend these schools pick up a trade and they wind up working for different companies as the years go on. But that's not what's happening. We have a lot of schools who have turned into charter schools because they wasn't passing the MCAS. That's another big issue for me, is the fact that we're pushing testing on students that are not receiving the actual resources so they can pass these tests. Not everyone tests well. It's a proven fact that people with anxiety does not test well. They create these, they get nervous, they panic, and of course they don't test well when you have a time limit. So having our students take the MCAS, on one hand, it's a good thing to measure what they're learning, but then on the other hand, it's not, because we don't have teachers who are not teaching up to par. How do we have an individual who runs the school department not knowing that a good percentage of the teachers are not even certified by the state to become teachers? I mean, that would be the first thing I would do coming into a new position, is to find out is everyone qualified for their positions, and if they're not, then we need to adjust it. And I don't see that happening anytime soon.
Thank you. So the second question is, what specifically are you going to do to improve them? A, how many schools are you going to visit? B, what programs would you add or subtract? And C, how much more money, if any, do you think the schools need?
I run the Boston Bengals. It's a Pop Warner program. I visit as many schools as I can, and what I mean by that is I have a lot of athletes, student athletes, and the program has about 140 to 160 kids. Varies on years, but as a counselor, that would be my biggest objective, is to visit every school to see what the school's needs are. Not just to send someone out, do an evaluation, and then come back a month later, and then 6 months later, we're still sitting in the same predicament. We still need to fix this and fix that. So I would visit every single school within the district to make sure that, one, the administration knows that we are watching, we are paying attention to what's going on, we are concerned, and we are here to support. Programs that I would add, there's a lot of programs already here. Issue is, as a former city employee for Boston Centers for Youth and Families, what I noticed was a big issue was the fact that two departments were not combined to work on the same objective. Boston Centers for Youth and Families, their current schedule is 1:30 to 9:30. Most schools run till about 1:30 to 2. So there's no physical way that an athletic director can outreach to students in the school and say, hey, look, we're doing a basketball program, we're doing soccer, whatever the activity is, there's no outreach to bring in those individuals to utilize the program. So a lot of these programs, I feel that would be one of the first things that I would do. I feel that community centers should run along with school hours. If the school lets out at 2, I feel staff should come in at 11 to 7. That would give the resources to the school. Not just that, but the simple fact that a lot of schools don't have phys ed. They don't have gym teachers. Well, community centers has athletic directors. They have athletic assistant directors. So why not bring those people in to provide those services to the kids in the school? It won't happen because of the unions. It won't happen because of the departments. So a lot of the red tape needs to be cut out and let these programs actually come in and service these kids. I ran a pool. I taught swimming for 21 years. I trained lifeguards all over the city. So when I was able to communicate with these youth, it was through a swimming pool. That was the avenue. And I was able to teach them a lot of the things that they needed to learn for life. If you can't tread water, you can't swim in the deep end. Simple as that. So in life, if you can't do certain things, you can't move on. So bringing those things to the school, which is already in place. I swam on the community center swim team back in late 80s, early 90s at the Mason Pool. Why not have these swim teams a part of the elementary school level, middle school level? Most of our elementary schools, like the Blackstone, have a swimming pool. The Marshall has a swimming pool. The Harlan has a swimming pool. The Condon has a swimming pool. I've visited a lot of these schools. I've been in and out of them, so I know what kind of facilities they have. So by saying that, let's think of it like this. You take these kids, you put them on a swim team, you teach them how to swim. That's a life skill. It's believe it or not, they actually say there's more minorities dying from drowning than actually gun violence, because the numbers are higher. So why not teach these life skills and use what's already in place? Same with youth workers. Youth workers should be based out of middle school, where they can work with the youth between the ages of 11 and 14 before they become gang affiliated or become involved in a lifestyle that's going to take a lot of work to turn around. But these are things that are not happening. Why? Because one department won't work with the next department. So that's something that I would love to see change and hold people accountable within these departments. You visit any community center after 7 p.m., depending on the area, it's an empty building. That's city funds being wasted. And I don't mean, paying someone to work is a waste. It's a waste when you don't have anything going on for the youth or the families to use, where it should be from top bottom, not bottom up. That's the issue that I found in BCYF. You have a program soup who doesn't create programs, and then you have athletic lifeguards and so forth that are there to provide these services, but there's no actual structured program. Money-wise, we got to add more. We got to stop taking from the school department to put into the police department. When I sat as a chapter chair for my union, SEIU 888, I was a chapter chair for about a little over 12 years. I negotiated about 5-6 contracts. I did multiple grievances, class actions, layoffs, and so forth. Everything that went under that chapter chair title, I was engaged and involved in making sure that my members was receiving, the representation they needed. So I noticed a lot of the issues when it came down to the budget. Black and white. Only time I look at black and white is something that is important to me. It's on paper. It's the only time that you look at it, you interpret it one way, I interpret it another way. But when I was reviewing the budget during our negotiation contract, we would notice a lot of the money would be cut out of one department and shipped over to another. A lot of it was the police department. And I understand you want more policing, but when you have $62 million in overtime, when you have one officer creating, $200 million in overtime, this is one officer. This is not, a whole department. This is one officer. And that goes down all the way down to, $80,000, $90,000 a year. So if we're able to give out $62 million in overtime, hire more officers. Take some of that money, hire more officers, shrink the overtime, put the money back in the schools. We don't need a $40,000 ice cream truck for the police department to drive around and give out ice cream if they have ice cream, if it's an event that they are invited to. So why not take this money that we've been taking out of the schools and put it back into schools? Music. We have Madison Park again, has a music portion of the school that's not used. You have a television production, live studio in the school that is not being used. With all these new social media outlets and all these new different outlets like YouTube videos and Instagram and all these different places, we can support these youth using these outlets. But of course, we need someone to be there to be the instructor. Like yourself, you go to I can't even say it. You go to Berkeley, so there's a video production there. You have Emerson, it's around the corner, another video production. So how hard is it to get a group of interns who needs to do a certain amount of hours per year? Every year there's a new group. It's a feeding system. But instead of doing that, people rather say, oh, let's close it, let's let it be, it's not working. I graduated from Madison. I've graduated from Franklin Institute. I did automotive science. I have an applied science associate's degree. But it goes back to the funding. If we had more funding in the schools, Madison Park, again, I always use Madison because Madison's an ideal school because it's a VOTEC. You have over 30 professions that come out of Madison. Boston's a union city. How many jobs are coming out of Madison for unions? How many students are graduating from Madison and getting an internship at a local union? The number is 0. Why? That shouldn't happen. And this is one of my biggest fight as a candidate, is to show that we have all these resources and no one wants to sit down and say, hey, look, enough's enough. Let's stop giving back to the people who really needs it versus the people who are out here contributing to someone's campaign and, making their bank bigger than it needs to be. If you do community work like myself, it's not hard for you to come out here and campaign. You drive down the street, people know you. You drive up the street, people know you. You're in different events. You're in different community groups. But when you're not, you have to solicit as much funds as you can because you need to do 100,000 flyer mailing. That costs money. And if you don't have it, you can't do it. So I feel that, our school system needs a lot of help. And the people that are there now are not looking at the bigger picture. They're just puppets playing the game. They're being told exactly what to do, when to do it, how to do it, instead of saying, I got into this profession 20 years ago to help people, or a year ago, or 6 months ago, but it's not there. We've lost that. So other than that, I'm glad that, things like this are happening. I got tons to say on it. Only thing that I would subtract, just looking back at some of the stuff, only thing that I would subtract, we don't need military camps for schools. The Holland has the highest suspension rate for kindergartens. How are you suspending the kindergarten at a rate like that? And it was a news article about 2 years ago, the suspension rate for an elementary school, and it was all kindergartners. So if the child does not spend enough time in school, how does he learn? You want them to be in school 180 days, but if you're suspended once a month, there goes the 180 days. So there's a lot of little things like that I would like to see worked out. More in-house suspension, more conferences, bring in more resources. My children go to school in Concord. It's a public school. They spend $17,000 per student. Boston spends $20,000 per student. Why is it that they have a better graduation rate versus what we have in Boston? Why is it that my son can be offered reading assistant, math assistant, but we can't offer the same for, and I'm not saying selected group, but for all the students who need that kind of support? IEPs, to me, is BS. You get a child to be on an IEP, which takes forever, and that's for students who need additional help, who have learning disabilities, and you bring in all this funds for this individual to receive these services and never receive any of these services. And that's another issue that goes back to the funding. This money comes in for these students, but then they're not actually putting back to the student. So, as the days progress, and as I come out here and speak to people and have my opportunity to express myself, working in a school myself for like 17 years, I've seen what happens to a lot of these students once they leave elementary school level. The love is lost. And what I mean by the love is lost, you don't have teachers who are hands-on as much, because you're not going to go back and forth with a 12-year-old arguing over things. So things like that is something that we can fix by putting in more funding into the schools.
Okay, well, thank you for your time. This is Darosa, who's running for Boston City Council at large.
Thank you.